The heavy bag swayed in my garage like a pendulum marking the hours of my failing marriage. Each punch echoed through the silence that had become our house, a silence so thick you could choke on it. 3 months of cold shoulders, turned backs, and conversations that died before they started. My wife Lyra had perfected the art of making me invisible in my own home. "You need to learn appreciation, Mason," she'd said before storming out earlier that evening. "I'm blocking your number for a week. Maybe then you'll understand what you're losing." I'd laughed, actually laughed, and told her to take a month. The look on her face was worth every penny of whatever storm was coming. Now, at midnight, I was working out my frustrations on the bag when her phone buzzed on the workbench. She'd forgotten it in her dramatic exit. The screen lit up with a message that made my fists stop mid-swing. "Miss you already. Next time, bring the red dress. Jay." My hands went numb. Not from the cold garage air, but from the realization that my wife's week-long silent treatment might have less to do with teaching me lessons and more to do with keeping me distracted. I picked up the phone. No passcode. Lyra always said she had nothing to hide. Apparently, she was wrong about that too. The messages painted a picture that would make a divorce lawyer weep with joy. 3 different men, 3 different conversations, 3 different promises about what she'd do when her pathetic husband wasn't around. Jet Forrester owned the custom car garage downtown. His messages were crude, demanding, full of references to meeting at his shop after hours. Travis Kern worked at First National Bank. His texts were smoother, talking about business opportunities and private consultations. Then there was Theo Marquez from her interior design firm, whose messages read like a desperate teenager begging for scraps of attention. I set the phone down carefully, like it might explode. In a way, it already had. My reflection stared back from the garage window. 38 years old, graying at the temples, still in decent shape thanks to my boxing hobby. I looked like exactly what I was. A tech project manager who'd spent 15 years building a life with someone who'd been busy tearing it down behind my back. The smart play would be to confront her. The legal play would be to document everything and call a lawyer. The satisfying play would be something else entirely. I picked up the phone again and started taking screenshots. By dawn, I had a complete picture of my wife's extracurricular activities. The messages went back months, detailed plans, meeting locations, even complaints about my work schedule and how it interfered with her appointments. She'd shared our financial information with Travis, given Jet access to our house when I traveled for work, and promised Theo inside information about upcoming commercial projects in the city. My wife wasn't just cheating, she was running a small business out of our marriage. I made coffee and sat in our kitchen, surrounded by the designer touches Lyra had insisted on. The imported tile, the custom cabinets, the professional-grade appliances she used maybe twice a month. Everything perfect for the social media posts that documented our blessed life for her 1,000 followers. The front door opened around 7. Lyra walked in wearing yesterday's clothes and an expression that dared me to say something about it. "Morning, honey," I said, not looking up from my coffee. "Sleep well?" She froze halfway to the stairs. "I stayed at Seren's. We had a girls' night." Seren Faye was Lyra's best friend, a social media influencer who'd turned posting pictures of her breakfast into a career. If Lyra had been at Seren's, it was news to Jet Forrester, who'd sent 3 messages between midnight and 6, asking when she was coming over. "Sounds fun," I said. "How is Seren these days?" "Fine." Lyra's voice had that edge it got when she was lying. "We talked about you, actually, about how you've been so distant lately." "Distant?" I nodded thoughtfully. That's one way to put it. She started up the stairs, then stopped. "Where's my phone?" "Garage workbench. You forgot it when you stormed out to learn me that lesson about appreciation." 20 minutes later, she came back down, phone in hand, face pale. "We need to talk," she said. "Do we?" I finished my coffee and stood up. because I was thinking we need some space instead. You know, to really appreciate what we have here. Mason, I'm going to work. We'll talk tonight, or maybe next week. I haven't decided yet. I grabbed my keys and headed for the door, leaving her standing in our perfect kitchen with her phone full of evidence and no idea how much trouble she was in. The drive to my office gave me time to think. Lyra expected me to explode, to rage and throw things and make a scene she could use to paint herself as the victim. She'd probably already started crafting the story, how her controlling, emotionally distant husband had violated her privacy and made wild accusations. But I'd learned a few things in 15 years of managing tech projects. The best solutions weren't always the obvious ones. Sometimes you had to step back, analyze the system, and find the pressure points that would bring the whole thing down with minimal effort. My wife wanted to play games. Fine. I'd spent my career fixing broken systems. Time to see if the skills transferred. My office occupied the second floor of a converted warehouse downtown, the kind of space that looked industrial and creative enough to impress clients, but cheap enough to keep overhead low. I managed software implementations for mid-sized businesses, the unglamorous work of making computers talk to each other so people could do their jobs. It required patience, attention to detail, and the ability to see how all the pieces fit together. Useful skills, as it turned out. "You look like someone ran over your dog," said Danny Walsh, my lead developer, when I walked into the morning meeting 20 minutes late. "Worse," I said. "Someone ran over my marriage." Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. The team exchanged glances. They'd met Lyra at company parties, seen her work the room with her perfect smile and designer clothes. She'd charmed them all, especially the younger guys who thought having a beautiful wife meant you'd won some kind of lottery. "Want to talk about it?" asked Jenny Morrison, our business analyst. She was 45, divorced, and had the battle-tested wisdom of someone who'd survived her own marital disaster. "Not yet," I said, "but I might need some advice about documentation and evidence preservation." Jenny raised an eyebrow. "The kind of advice that comes with attorney-client privilege? The kind that comes with friend-to-friend common sense?" After the meeting, Jenny lingered behind. "You want to tell me what's really going on?" I showed her one of the screenshots from Lyra's phone. Nothing explicit, just enough to establish the pattern. "Oh, Mason." Jenny's expression shifted from curiosity to sympathy to something harder. "How long?" "Months at least, maybe longer." "You call a lawyer yet?" "Not yet. I'm still in the information gathering phase." Jenny studied me with the same intensity she brought to analyzing business requirements. "You're planning something." "I'm planning to protect myself." "Uh-huh." She didn't sound convinced. "Just remember that the best revenge is living well, not burning everything down." Who said anything about revenge? That afternoon, I drove past Jet Forrester's garage. It sat on a corner lot in the warehouse district, a converted auto shop with 3 bays and a small office. Jet's pride and joy, a restored 1969 Mustang Boss 429, sat in the parking lot like a monument to his ego. I'd heard about Jet through the local car scene, mid-30s, never married, the kind of guy who thought owning a cool car made him interesting. He specialized in custom work for clients with more money than sense, the type who wanted their daily drivers to sound like race cars. A perfect match for my wife's taste in everything flashy and superficial. I parked across the street and waited. Around 4:30, Lyra's white BMW pulled into the lot. She got out wearing a dress I'd bought her for our anniversary last year, the red one Jet had specifically requested in his messages. They embraced in the parking lot like teenagers, all hands and whispered words. Then they disappeared into the garage, pulling the bay door closed behind them. I sat there for an hour, taking pictures with my phone's camera, documenting times and license plates. Professional habit, Always document everything before making changes to the system. When Lyra finally emerged, her hair was messed up and her lipstick was gone. Jet walked her to her car, said something that made her laugh, and slapped her rear end as she got behind the wheel. Classy guy. I followed her home, staying far enough back to avoid detection. She beat me there by 10 minutes, just enough time to fix her appearance and start dinner like she'd been home all afternoon. "How was your day?" she asked when I walked into the kitchen. "Productive," I said. "Lots of problem solving. How about you?" "Quiet. I spent most of it thinking about us." "Come to any conclusions?" She turned from the stove, and for a moment I saw something that might have been genuine emotion in her eyes. Guilt, maybe, or fear. "I think we should try counseling," she said. "Counseling?" "To work on our communication issues." I almost laughed. After months of planning secret meetings with 3 different men, she wanted to work on communication. "That's an interesting idea," I said. "Let me think about it." That night, while Lyra slept beside me, I made a list on my phone. Not a plan, exactly. More like a project scope. The kind of document I'd create before implementing a new system. Current state analysis. Wife maintaining relationships with 3 men, sharing financial and personal information, using marital home for meetings, leveraging my work connections through her contacts. Desired future state, complete separation of assets, protection of professional reputation, minimal financial exposure, maximum consequences for betrayal, risk assessment, legal complications if handled poorly, professional damage if situation becomes public, emotional damage to daughter Danny, potential for escalation and retaliation, success criteria, clean divorce with favorable terms, preservation of relationship with Danny, professional reputation intact, personal satisfaction with outcome. I stared at the list for a long time before deleting it. Some things were better kept in your head. The next morning, Lyra left early for client meetings. I waited 30 minutes, then called in sick to work and drove to a storage facility on the outskirts of town. I rented a unit under my name only, paid 6 months in advance, and spent the rest of the day moving Lyra's belongings out of our house. Not everything, that would be too obvious. Just the expensive stuff, the designer clothes and accessories, the artwork she'd bought for her office, the jewelry I'd given her over the years. I photographed everything before packing it, created an inventory list, and stored it all in labeled boxes. By evening, our house looked exactly the same, but a little emptier. Like someone had turned down the volume on Lyra's presence. She didn't notice for 3 days. "Where's my Hermes bag?" Lyra stood in our bedroom doorway, still in her robe, holding her coffee like a weapon. "Which one?" I asked, not looking up from my laptop. "You have several." "The black one, the Kelly bag." "Haven't seen it. Did you check your car?" She disappeared into her walk-in closet. 30 seconds later, "Mason, where are my Louboutin shoes?" "The red ones or the black ones?" "All of them." I closed my laptop and went to investigate. Lyra stood in the middle of her closet, spinning slowly like she was surveying a crime scene. "Half my clothes are missing," she said. "My jewelry box is practically empty. What did you do?" "I cleaned house," I said. "Literally. You said I didn't appreciate what I had, so I decided to see what was really important." "You had no right." "Actually, I had every right. Community property laws are pretty clear about that." Her face went through several color changes. "Where are my things?" "Safe." "Mason, I swear to God, if I what?" I stepped closer, and she backed up instinctively. "If I what, Lyra?" For a moment, she looked like she might tell me the truth, about Jet and Travis and Theo, about the months of lies and secret meetings, about the way she'd been planning to leave me while bleeding our accounts dry. Instead, she went with anger. "I'm calling the police." "Good idea. Ask them about the penalties for adultery in a no-fault divorce state. I'm curious myself." She went very still. "What are you talking about?" I pulled out my phone and showed her one of the screenshots from her messages. Nothing too explicit, just enough to let her know I had the whole story. You went through my phone. You left it in my garage. I thought it might be important. Those messages, they're not what you think. Really? Because they seem pretty straightforward to me, especially the ones where you give Travis our bank account information. Lyra sat down hard on the edge of the bed. Mason, please, let me explain. I'm listening. But she didn't explain. She just sat there staring at the floor, probably trying to figure out which lie would work best. I want my things back, she said finally. I'm sure you do. This is extortion. This is marriage, for better or worse, remember? I left her sitting there and went to work. But first, I stopped by Coach Rick's gym. Rick Torino had been training fighters for 30 years, first in Boston, then here in Maine, when his wife wanted to get away from the city. He'd taught me to box when I was going through a rough patch in my 20s, and we'd stayed friends even after I cleaned up my act and got serious about my career. His gym occupied the basement of an old brick building downtown, all exposed pipes and concrete floors, and the smell of sweat and leather. It was the kind of place that looked exactly like what it was, a place where people came to hit things until they felt better. You look terrible, Rick said when I walked in. He was working the heavy bag himself, despite being 65 and built like a fire hydrant. Thanks, that's what I was going for. Woman trouble? The worst kind. Rick stopped punching and grabbed a towel. Want to talk about it? I told him the basics, the phone, the messages, the storage unit. He listened without interrupting, the way he'd taught me to listen to an opponent's breathing, to know when they were getting tired. So what's your plan? He asked when I finished. I'm working on it. Uh-huh. And this plan involve you doing anything stupid? Define stupid. Rick laughed, but there wasn't much humor in it. Stupid is thinking you can win a fight with someone who doesn't play by the same rules you do. What if I stop playing by the rules? Then you better make sure you win. That afternoon, I drove past Jet's garage again. This time, I parked in the lot next door and walked over like a potential customer. The front office was small and cluttered, with racing posters on the walls and a coffee machine that looked like it hadn't been cleaned since the Clinton administration. Jet emerged from one of the bays, wiping his hands on a rag. Help you with something? Maybe, I said. I heard you do custom work. Depends what you're looking for. Performance upgrades, something that'll get attention. Jet's eyes lit up. He was shorter than I'd expected, maybe 5'8", with the kind of build that came from working with tools instead of weights. Attractive enough, I supposed, if you like the bad boy mechanic thing. What kind of car? Haven't decided yet. Still shopping around? We talked for 10 minutes about engines and exhaust systems and other things I didn't really care about. Jet was enthusiastic, knowledgeable, and completely unaware that he was talking to the husband of his afternoon entertainment. You should stop by next week, he said as I was leaving. I've got a 69 Boss 429 I'm putting the finishing touches on. Real beauty. I'd like that, I said. Maybe I'll bring my wife. She appreciates nice cars. Something flickered in his expression, too quick to read, but definitely there. Sure, he said, always happy to meet a fellow enthusiast. I spent the drive home thinking about pressure points. In system analysis, you look for the places where small changes can have big effects, the single points of failure that can bring down the whole network. Jet's pressure point was obvious, his reputation and his pride. He'd built his business on being the guy who could make any car faster, louder, more impressive. His ego was wrapped up in that Boss 429 like a teenager's identity was wrapped up in their first car. Travis Kern would be different. Bankers cared about image, about appearing trustworthy and professional. They lived in a world where perception was everything and scandal was career poison. And Theo Marquez? He was just pathetic enough to be easy. The kind of guy who'd do anything to avoid confrontation. 3 different men, 3 different weaknesses, 3 different ways to apply pressure. By the time I got home, Lyra had called a locksmith and changed the locks on our house. I stood on my own front porch, key in hand, staring at the brass deadbolt that no longer recognized me as belonging there. My phone buzzed with a text from my wife. Storage unit address, now, or I call my lawyer. I typed back, call him, I'll wait. Then I drove to Home Depot and bought a crowbar. The locksmith was gone by the time I returned, but his van was still parked across the street. I knocked on the driver's window. You changed the locks on 47 Maple Street today? Yeah. Lady said her husband lost his keys. I showed him my driver's license with our address. I'm the husband. The locksmith, a kid maybe 25 years old with company logos on his shirt, looked confused. She said you were separated. News to me, we had breakfast together this morning. Man, I don't know what to tell you. She paid cash, showed me her ID with that address. Seemed legit. I'm sure it did. I handed him $50. What kind of locks did you install? Standard deadbolts. Nothing fancy. Thanks. The kid drove away, shaking his head, probably wondering why people couldn't handle their personal drama without dragging him into it. I walked around to the back of the house and let myself in through the sliding door. Lyra had forgotten to change that lock, probably because she'd forgotten it existed. The back deck faced the woods, invisible from the street, used mainly for grilling and the occasional glass of wine on summer evenings. She was waiting in the kitchen, phone in hand, probably ready to call 911 if I came through the front door with the crowbar. Breaking and entering now? She said when she saw me. It's my house, too. Not anymore. I set the crowbar on the kitchen counter, and she took a step back. Relax, I said. It's for the locks you illegally changed on my own front door. I have every right to secure my home. Our home, and no, you don't. Not without a court order. Lyra's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and her face went pale. Problem? I asked. No. But I could see the message on her screen. Cops were just here asking about you. Call me. Jay. Interesting. I hadn't called the police about anything. Lyra, I said carefully. What did you tell Jed about me? I don't know what you're talking about. The message on your phone suggests otherwise. She clutched the phone to her chest. You're paranoid. Am I? Or are you running out of lies to keep straight? My own phone rang. Unknown number. Mr. Redden, this is Officer Martinez with the city police. We had a report of suspicious activity at 47 Maple Street. Are you home? I am. What kind of suspicious activity? Someone reported a man with a crowbar trying to break into the house. I looked at Lyra, who was backing toward the living room. That would be me, I told the officer. My wife changed the locks while I was at work. I live here. Can you prove that? Driver's license, mortgage documents, utility bills. Take your pick. We'll be right there. 20 minutes later, I was sitting in my own living room explaining to 2 police officers why I'd needed a crowbar to get into my own house. Lyra sat across from me, playing the role of frightened wife perfectly. Has there been any domestic violence in this relationship? Officer Martinez asked. No, I said. Ma'am? Lyra hesitated just long enough to plant doubt. Not physical violence. What does that mean? He's been controlling, hiding my belongings, going through my personal things. Officer Martinez looked at me. Is that true? We're having marital problems, I said. I moved some of her things to storage to prevent them from being damaged or lost during the separation process. Without her permission? They're community property. I don't need her permission. The second officer, whose nameplate read Johnson, leaned forward. Mr. Redden, we understand you're going through a difficult time, but breaking into your own house with a crowbar sends the wrong message. I didn't break in. I used the back door, which was unlocked. Then why did you need the crowbar? For the front door locks my wife illegally changed without my knowledge or consent. Officer Martinez sighed. Here's what's going to happen. You're both going to calm down, and you're going to work this out through lawyers and courts like civilized adults. Mr. Redden, I suggest you find somewhere else to stay tonight. This is my house. Sir, your wife is clearly afraid of you. Whether that fear is justified or not, we can't have a situation where she's not afraid of me, I interrupted. She's afraid of getting caught. Caught doing what? I looked at Lyra, who was watching me with wide eyes, probably wondering if I was about to destroy her reputation in front of 2 police officers. Ask her, I said. But I didn't wait for an answer. I grabbed my laptop and a change of clothes and walked out of my own house, leaving my wife to explain to the officers why her husband might think she was hiding something. I checked into a hotel downtown, the kind of place that catered to business travelers and people whose lives had recently exploded. The room was generic and clean, with a view of the parking lot and the industrial skyline beyond. I ordered pizza and spent the evening researching Maine divorce law on my laptop, community property, adultery as grounds for divorce, asset protection strategies. Fascinating reading if you enjoyed the legal equivalent of a root canal. Around 10 o'clock, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Seren. Lyra told me what happened. We need to talk. Seren Faye, Lyra's best friend, the social media influencer who'd supposedly hosted the girls' night that never happened. I texted back. About what? About how to fix this before it gets worse. I'm listening. Not over text. Meet me tomorrow. Coffee shop on Main Street, 10 a.m. I stared at the phone for a long time before responding. See you there. Then I called Jenny Morrison. Mason, it's late. Everything okay? Define okay. Oh boy. What happened? I told her about the locks, the police, the hotel room. Jesus, Mason, you need to be more careful. Careful about what? Existing in my own house? Careful about how this looks. Angry husband, frightened wife, police reports. You're creating a narrative that won't help you in divorce court. So what do? Get a lawyer, a good one, and stop trying to handle this yourself. I'm not trying to handle anything. I'm just trying to understand what's happening. What's happening is your wife is playing chess while you're playing checkers. She's thinking 3 moves ahead and you're reacting to whatever she does. So I should think 3 moves ahead too. You should let a professional handle it. After I hung up, I sat in the hotel room chair and stared out at the parking lot. Jenny was right. Lyra was playing chess. She'd maneuvered me into looking like the angry, controlling husband, while she played the victim. The changed locks, the police report, the carefully worded suggestions about my behavior. But chess was a game I understood. I'd been playing it since I was 12, when my father taught me that every move had consequences and the best players thought about the endgame before they touched their first piece. Lyra thought she was 3 moves ahead. She had no idea I was thinking about checkmate. I pulled out my phone and started making a list of everything I knew about Jet Forrester, Travis Kern, and Theo Marquez. Their businesses, their reputations, their weaknesses. By midnight, I had a plan. The coffee shop on Main Street occupied the ground floor of a renovated Victorian, all exposed brick and reclaimed wood, and the kind of artisanal atmosphere that charged $5 for drinks that used to cost 50 cents. Seren Faye sat in a corner booth, scrolling through her phone with the focused intensity of someone whose livelihood depended on social media engagement. She looked exactly like her Instagram photos. Blonde hair in calculated waves, makeup applied with professional precision, clothes that managed to seem casual and expensive at the same time. Mid-30s, attractive in the way that required constant maintenance and careful lighting. Mason. She stood up when she saw me, offered a hug that I didn't return. Thanks for coming. Seren. I sat down across from her. This should be interesting. She ordered something with oat milk and cinnamon. I got black coffee. Lyra's a mess, she said once the barista left. She's terrified of what you might do. What I might do? Come on, Mason. The storage unit thing? Changing the bank accounts? You're trying to control her. I'm trying to protect myself. From what? I showed her one of the screenshots from Lyra's phone. Seren glanced at it, and something shifted in her expression. Too subtle to read, but definitely there. This doesn't prove anything, she said. It proves she's been lying to me for months. It proves she's been talking to other men. That's not a crime. Adultery is grounds for divorce in Maine. Only if you can prove it actually happened. I studied her face. Serene was being careful, choosing her words like someone who'd thought about this conversation in advance. How long have you known? I asked. Known what? About Jet, Travis, Theo. She took a sip of her elaborate coffee drink. I don't know what you're talking about. Really? Because your best friend is having affairs with 3 different men and you, her confidant, the person she tells everything, you had no idea? Lyra doesn't tell me everything. She told you enough to set up alibis. The girls' night that never happened, for instance. Seren's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, frowned, typed a quick response. Look, she said, I'm trying to help you here. How? Lyra's willing to work things out. Counseling, therapy, whatever it takes, but you have to stop this vindictive behavior. Vindictive? The storage unit, the bank accounts, trying to make her look bad. It's not helping anyone. I leaned back in my chair. What exactly did Lyra tell you about last night? That you broke into the house with a crowbar, that the police had to intervene. And you believed that? Why wouldn't I? Because you know me, Seren. We've been friends for what, 5 years? Do I seem like the kind of guy who breaks into houses with crowbars? She hesitated. People change when they're angry. Do they? Or do they just stop pretending to be something they're not? Her phone buzzed again. This time she ignored it. What do you want, Mason? I want the truth. About what? About how long you've been helping my wife cheat on me. The coffee shop was busy enough that our conversation was lost in the general noise, but Seren still looked around nervously before answering. I haven't helped anyone do anything. You provided alibis, girls' nights, shopping trips, spa weekends. How many of those actually happened? Some of them. Some. Look, I'm not going to sit here and let you interrogate me about your role in destroying my marriage. Seren stood up. I think we're done here. Sit down. Something in my voice made her pause. Maybe it was the tone I used in project meetings when someone was about to make a mistake that would cost everyone time and money. She sat. Here's what I think happened, I said. Lyra started having her affairs, and she needed someone to cover for her. You were the obvious choice, the best friend, the person everyone would believe. She probably told you it was just harmless flirting at first. Maybe she said I was neglecting her, or that our marriage was already over. Seren stared at her coffee. But it wasn't harmless, was it? It was systematic, planned. She was using these men for specific things. Jet for the thrill, Travis for financial information, Theo for business connections. And you helped her coordinate it all. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? Because I'm starting to think this whole thing was more organized than it looked. 3 different men, 3 different benefits, 1 very convenient best friend to provide alibis and advice. Her phone buzzed a 3rd time. This time I could see the screen. Where are you? We need to talk. L. Lyra's getting nervous, I said, wondering what you're telling me. I'm not telling you anything. No, you're not. Which is interesting, because an innocent person would be defending themselves. Instead, you're just sitting there like someone who's been caught. Seren grabbed her phone and purse. I don't have to listen to this. You're right. You don't. But before you go, let me ask you something. She paused. How long have you hated me? What? It's a simple question. How long have you hated me, Seren? I don't hate you. Really? Because helping someone destroy their marriage is usually personal. People don't go to that much trouble unless they have a reason. She stared at me for a long moment, and I saw something in her eyes that looked almost like respect. You're smarter than she said you were. What else did she say? But Seren was already walking away, her phone pressed to her ear, probably calling Lyra to report that their plan had hit a snag. I finished my coffee and thought about chess moves. Serene's reaction had confirmed what I'd suspected. This wasn't just about Lyra's affairs. There was something else, something personal, something that made my wife's best friend willing to help destroy my marriage. I needed more information. Fortunately, I knew where to get it. That afternoon, I drove to Travis Kern's bank. First National occupied a modern building downtown, all glass and steel and the kind of architecture that was supposed to convey stability and trustworthiness. Travis worked in commercial lending, according to his LinkedIn profile, helping local businesses secure financing for expansion and development. I walked into the lobby and asked to speak with someone about a business loan. "What kind of business?" asked the receptionist. "Tech consulting. I'm looking to expand operations." 20 minutes later, I was sitting across from Travis Kern in his office, discussing my fictional expansion plans. He was exactly what I'd expected, mid-30s, expensive suit, the kind of practiced charm that came with sales training and commission incentives. "So you're looking at roughly $200,000 in startup costs?" he said, reviewing the fake business plan I'd thrown together that morning. "That's the conservative estimate. And your current revenue stream?" I gave him numbers that were close to accurate, my actual salary, the consulting work I did on the side, the investment accounts Lyra didn't know about. "This looks very promising," Travis said. "I think we can definitely work with you on this." "Excellent. My wife will be thrilled. She's been pushing me to take this step for months." "Your wife?" "Lyra Redden. She works in interior design. Very ambitious woman." Travis's pen stopped moving across his notepad. "Redden. You know her?" "The name sounds familiar. She might have mentioned you. She knows a lot of people in the business community." "Right." Travis was trying to look casual, but there was sweat on his forehead now. "Well, let me pull together some preliminary numbers for you. Can you come back next week?" "Absolutely. Should I bring Lyra? She handles most of our financial planning." "That won't be necessary." I shook his hand and left him sitting in his office, probably wondering how much trouble he was in and whether my loan application was legitimate or some kind of trap. Both, actually. From the bank, I drove to Lyra's design firm. Marquez and Associates occupied a converted warehouse in the Arts District, the kind of space that looked creative and expensive and slightly impractical. Theo Marquez had inherited the business from his father, according to the company website, and had been struggling to modernize it while maintaining its reputation for high-end residential work. The receptionist told me Theo was in a client meeting, but would be free in 30 minutes. I waited in the lobby, surrounded by portfolio books and fabric samples, and the kind of furniture that looked like art but probably wasn't comfortable to actually use. "Mr. Redden?" Theo emerged from a conference room, followed by an elderly couple who looked like they'd just spent a fortune on someone else's taste. "I'm Theo Marquez. Thanks for waiting." He was younger than I'd expected, maybe 30, with the kind of nervous energy that came from trying too hard to impress everyone. Attractive in a boyish way, probably appealing to women who liked men they could mother. "I understand you're interested in some design work?" "My wife and I are renovating our house," I said. "She suggested I talk to you about it." "Your wife?" "Lyra Redden. She said you two had discussed some ideas." Theo's face went through the same color changes I'd seen from Travis. "Lyra Redden. You do know her?" We work together sometimes, on projects. She speaks very highly of you." That's great. So, what kind of renovation are you thinking about?" I spent 20 minutes describing imaginary plans for our kitchen and living room, watching Theo get more uncomfortable with every detail. He kept checking his phone. probably hoping for a message from Lyra explaining what was happening. "This sounds like a significant project," he said finally. "Very exciting." Lyra thought so too. In fact, she said you two had talked about it quite a bit. "Right, yes. We've discussed it." "Recently? I'm sorry? Have you discussed it recently? Because Lyra mentioned you'd been very helpful with some of the preliminary planning." Theo looked like he was about to throw up. "Mr. Redden, I think there might be some confusion here." "About what?" "About the project. I don't think Lyra and I ever discussed renovating your house." "Really? That's strange. She specifically mentioned meeting with you several times to go over ideas. We weren't talking about your house." "What were you talking about?" Theo stared at me for a long moment, probably trying to figure out whether I was genuinely confused or setting him up. "I think you should talk to your wife," he said finally. "I intend to." I left him sitting in his showroom, surrounded by expensive furniture and fabric samples, probably wondering if his career was about to implode. 3 conversations, 3 very different reactions, but the same underlying panic. They all knew they were in trouble. They just didn't know how much trouble yet. By the time I got back to my hotel room, I had 17 missed calls from Lyra and 12 text messages, each one more frantic than the last. The final message was simple. "We need to talk, tonight." I texted back. "My place or yours?" "Yours is mine too." "Not anymore. Hotel lobby, 8 p.m. "Mason, please, don't do this." "Do what?" "Whatever you're planning." I turned off my phone and spent the rest of the evening working on my laptop, refining the plan that was starting to take shape in my mind. 3 pressure points, 3 different approaches, 1 coordinated strategy that would bring down the whole network at once. Lyra thought she was playing chess. She was about to learn that I'd been playing a completely different game. Lyra arrived at the hotel lobby 20 minutes late, wearing jeans and a sweater instead of her usual designer armor. She looked tired, older somehow, like the stress was finally showing through her carefully maintained facade. "You look terrible," I said when she sat down across from me. "Thanks. You look like you're enjoying yourself." "I'm having an interesting week." The lobby was nearly empty, just us, the desk clerk, and a businessman working on his laptop in the corner. Neutral territory, public enough to prevent a scene, private enough for honest conversation. "What did you say to them?" Lyra asked. "To who?" "You know who." "I had some business conversations, nothing more." Business conversations. With Travis about a loan, with Theo about some design work, with Jet about car modifications. Lyra closed her eyes. "Mason, please, this has to stop." "What has to stop?" "The games, the manipulation, the way you're trying to destroy everything." "I'm not trying to destroy anything, I'm just trying to understand what I'm dealing with." "You're dealing with a marriage that's in trouble, that's all." "Is it?" She opened her eyes and looked at me directly for the first time in months. "What do you want?" "I want the truth." "About what?" "About how long you've been planning to leave me." Lyra was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "I wasn't planning to leave you." "No?" "I was planning for you to leave me." "Explain that." "The affairs, the way I've been acting, the distance between us. I thought if I made you miserable enough, you'd be the one to file for divorce. Then I could play the victim, get sympathy, maybe get a better settlement." "And Seren helped you plan this?" "Seren suggested it." "Why?" Lyra looked around the lobby, checking to make sure no one was listening. "Because she hates you." "I gathered that. What I don't understand is why." "Because you cost her everything." I stared at her. "What are you talking about?" 5 years ago, when she was starting her consulting business. She bid on that municipal contract, the one for the new city website. You were on the selection committee. The memory came back slowly. Seren had been running a small marketing firm back then, before she'd reinvented herself as a social media influencer. Her company had bid on a web development project for the city, and I'd been one of the technical reviewers. Her proposal was garbage, I said. She had no experience with that kind of system integration. She needed that contract, Mason. It would have established her credibility, brought in other clients. When the city rejected her bid, her business collapsed. That's not my fault. You wrote the technical review that torpedoed her proposal. I wrote an honest assessment of her capabilities. You destroyed her company. I prevented the city from wasting taxpayer money on a consultant who couldn't deliver. Lyra shook her head. You have no idea what that did to her. She lost everything, her business, her savings, her confidence. She had to start over from nothing. And now she's successful. Now she's successful because she learned to manipulate people instead of trying to provide actual value. I thought about Seren's social media empire, built on carefully curated lifestyle content and product endorsements. It was smart in its way. She'd found a business model that played to her strengths instead of exposing her weaknesses. So this whole thing is revenge? This whole thing is Seren getting payback for what you did to her 5 years ago. And you went along with it. I went along with it because I was unhappy. With me? With us. With the way we'd stopped talking, stopped connecting. With the way you looked at me like I was just another project to manage. So you decided to have affairs with 3 different men. I decided to feel wanted again. We sat in silence for a while. The businessman in the corner closed his laptop and left. The desk clerk pretended to be busy with paperwork. What happens now? Lyra asked finally. Now you tell me everything. Everything about what? About the plan. About what you and Seren were really trying to accomplish. Lyra sighed. She wanted me to clean out the bank accounts and disappear. Make it look like you'd been abusive, get a restraining order, file for divorce while you were scrambling to defend yourself. And the affairs? Were supposed to stay secret until after the divorce. Then I could move on with whoever I wanted while you dealt with the financial and legal mess. But I found out too early. You found out because I got careless, because part of me wanted you to find out. Why? Because I felt guilty. Because despite everything, I still... She didn't finish the sentence. What about Jet and Travis and Theo? What was their role in this? Jet was just for fun. Travis was supposed to help with hiding assets. Theo was going to give me a job after the divorce, help me establish financial independence. And they all knew about each other? No, that was the point. Keep them separate, use each one for what I needed, make sure none of them knew about the others. Except Seren knew about all of them. Seren orchestrated all of it. I pulled out my phone and showed Lyra the screenshots I'd taken from her messages. These conversations don't read like someone who's being manipulated. They read like someone who's enjoying herself. Lyra looked at the images and winced. I was enjoying myself. That's what made it so easy for Seren to convince me to keep going. So what changed? You changed. Instead of getting angry and doing something stupid, you got methodical. You started thinking instead of reacting. It scared her. And now? Now she's panicking. She's realized that you're not the kind of man who falls apart when his world gets turned upside down. You're the kind who fights back. Smart woman. Mason, please. Whatever you're planning, don't do it. Let's just end this quietly. Get divorced, split everything fairly, move on with our lives. After what you've put me through? After what we've put each other through? I studied her face, looking for signs of deception or manipulation, but all I saw was exhaustion and something that might have been genuine regret. It's too late for that, I said finally. Why? Because this isn't just about us anymore. It's about Seren and Jet and Travis and Theo. It's about a conspiracy to destroy my life, and I'm not going to let that go unpunished. What are you going to do? I'm going to finish what you started. Lyra stared at me. What does that mean? It means you wanted me to be the villain in this story. Congratulations. You got your wish. I stood up to leave, but she grabbed my arm. Mason, wait. There's something else you need to know. What? Seren didn't just want revenge against you. She wanted me. What do you mean? She's been in love with me for years. The whole plan wasn't just about destroying you, it was about getting me away from you so she could have me for herself. I sat back down. Are you telling me this entire thing was orchestrated by a woman who's obsessed with my wife? I'm telling you that Seren Faye is a lot more dangerous than you think she is. Dangerous how? She's smart, she's patient, and she has nothing left to lose. If you go after her, she'll destroy both of us. Let her try. Mason, I'm serious. She has photos, recordings, financial information. She's been documenting everything for months, building a case against you that would make you look like an abusive, controlling husband who drove his wife to have affairs. Except that's not what happened. Doesn't matter. She has enough evidence to make it look like that's what happened. I thought about the police report from the night before, the way Lyra had played the frightened wife, the carefully constructed narrative that painted me as the aggressor. She's been planning this for 5 years? She's been waiting for the right opportunity for 5 years. When I started complaining about our marriage, she saw her chance. And you let her manipulate you. I let her give me permission to do what I already wanted to do. Which was? Hurt you the way you hurt her. We stared at each other across the hotel lobby table, two people who'd spent 15 years building a life together and 3 months tearing it apart. So what happens now? I asked. Now you decide whether you want to be the bigger person or whether you want to play Seren's game. What do you want me to do? I want you to walk away, file for divorce, take half of everything, and start over somewhere else. And leave her free to do this to someone else? Leave her free to self-destruct on her own, because that's what she'll do, Mason. She's already starting to crack under the pressure. How do you know? Because she's been calling me every hour since yesterday, getting more paranoid and erratic each time. She's convinced you're going to destroy her, and she's making plans to disappear. Where? I don't know, but she's liquidating assets, closing accounts, preparing to run. I thought about Seren's behavior at the coffee shop, the way she'd kept checking her phone, the nervous energy that had seemed out of character for someone who made her living projecting confidence and control. When is she planning to leave? Soon, maybe tonight. Then I guess I better move fast. Mason, don't do this. Do what? Whatever you're planning, it's not worth it. Isn't it? No. Because even if you win, you'll lose. You'll become the kind of person who destroys other people's lives for revenge. Other people already destroyed my life. I'm just returning the favor. I stood up again, and this time Lyra didn't try to stop me. I'm sorry, she said as I walked away. So am I. But I wasn't sorry about what had happened. I was sorry about what was going to happen next. I spent the night in my hotel room, refining the plan and making lists. Not just of what I was going to do, but of what could go wrong and how to prevent it. Project management skills applied to personal destruction. There was probably a business book in there somewhere. By morning, I had everything mapped out. 3 targets, 3 different approaches, 1 coordinated strike that would bring down the entire conspiracy at once. I started with Jet. His garage opened at 8 a.m. I was waiting in the parking lot at 7:30, watching through the chain-link fence as he unlocked the building and turned on the lights. His precious Boss 429 sat under a car cover in the first bay, protected from dust and prying eyes. I waited until he went into the office, then climbed the fence and let myself into the garage through a side door that didn't quite close properly. The kind of security oversight that happened when you were more worried about showing off your cars than protecting them. The Boss 429 was everything Jet had claimed, a perfect restoration, probably worth more than most people's houses. Cherry red paint, chrome that gleamed like jewelry, an engine that looked like it belonged in a museum. I didn't damage it. That would have been too obvious, too crude. Instead, I disconnected the battery, loosened the distributor cap, and removed a few critical fuses. Nothing permanent, nothing that couldn't be fixed in an hour by someone who knew what they were doing. But enough to ensure the car wouldn't start when Jet tried to show it off to potential customers. Then I placed a small recording device under the dashboard, the kind of thing you could buy online for $50, voice-activated, good for about 8 hours of audio. I was back in my car before Jet emerged from his office with his first cup of coffee. Phase 1 complete. Travis Kern arrived at his bank at 8:15, wearing another expensive suit and carrying a briefcase that probably cost more than most people made in a week. I followed him into the lobby and got in line behind 3 other customers, just another person waiting to conduct routine banking business. When my turn came, I approached his secretary and asked to speak with Travis about my loan application. "He's in a meeting," she said. "Can I schedule you for later this week?" "Actually, I just need to drop off some additional documentation. It'll only take a minute." She called his office, spoke quietly for a moment, then hung up. "He can see you now, but he only has 5 minutes. Travis looked even more nervous than he had the day before. His office was immaculate, the kind of workspace that belonged to someone who needed everything to be perfect and under control. "Mr. Redden," he said, not getting up from behind his desk, "I wasn't expecting to see you so soon. I wanted to follow up on our conversation yesterday." "Right, about the loan. Actually, about my wife." Travis went very still. "Your wife?" "Lyra. I believe you know her." "I'm not sure what you mean." I pulled out my phone and showed him one of the screenshots from Lyra's messages, one of the explicit ones, where Travis had described in detail what he wanted to do to her the next time they met. "I think you know exactly what I mean." Travis stared at the screen, his face cycling through several shades of pale. "Where did you get that?" "From my wife's phone." That's a private conversation. Between you and a married woman whose husband you've been helping to defraud." "I haven't defrauded anyone." "No? Because according to these messages, you've been providing Lyra with confidential information about our joint accounts, information she's been using to hide assets in preparation for divorce proceedings. That's not... I never... You never what? Never gave her our account balances? Never helped her understand how to transfer money without my knowledge? Never advised her on how to make it look like I was hiding assets from her?" Travis was sweating now, despite the air conditioning in his office. "Mr. Redden, I think there's been a misunderstanding. I think there's been a conspiracy, and I think you're going to help me understand exactly how it worked. I can't discuss confidential client information. Even when that client is your co-conspirator in adultery and financial manipulation. I need to ask you to leave. I need you to answer some questions first." I closed his office door and sat down in the chair across from his desk. Travis reached for his phone, but I held up my hand. "Before you call security, let me explain something to you. I'm a project manager for tech implementations. Do you know what that means?" No. It means I'm very good at documenting processes, identifying system failures, and presenting complex information in ways that non-technical people can understand." "Okay. It also means I'm very good at building cases, at taking scattered pieces of information and organizing them into coherent narratives that demonstrate cause and effect." Travis was listening now, his hand frozen halfway to the phone. "I have 6 months of messages between you and my wife. I have bank records showing unusual account activity that correlates with your meetings. I have witness statements from restaurant staff who remember seeing you together." "Witness statements?" "People remember attractive couples, Travis, especially when they're obviously not married to each other. What do you want?" I want you to write down everything, every conversation you had with my wife about our finances, every piece of advice you gave her, every law you helped her bend or break. I can't do that. You can and you will. Because if you don't, I'm going to take everything I have to your supervisor, to the State Banking Commission, and to the local newspaper. You can't prove anything illegal happened. I don't have to prove it. I just have to make it look suspicious enough that your bank has to investigate. How do you think that's going to affect your career? Travis stared at me for a long moment, probably calculating his options and realizing he didn't have any good ones. What guarantee do I have that you won't use this information against me? You don't have any guarantees, but you do have a choice. Cooperate with me now, or deal with the consequences later. He opened his desk drawer and pulled out a legal pad. What do you want to know? 20 minutes later, I had a detailed confession describing how Travis had helped Lyra understand our financial situation, advised her on asset protection strategies, and provided her with information she'd use to prepare for divorce proceedings. Nothing technically illegal, but enough to end his career if it became public. Phase 2. Complete. Theo Marquez was waiting for me when I arrived at his design firm. "Mr. Redden," he said as soon as I walked through the door, "we need to talk." I was hoping you'd say that. His office was smaller than Travis's, cluttered with fabric samples and design portfolios, and the kind of creative chaos that suggested someone who was more artist than businessman. "I know why you're here," he said without preamble. "Do you? You want to know about me and Lyra. I want to know about you and my wife, yes." Theo sat down heavily in his desk chair. "There's not much to tell. I'll be the judge of that. She came to me 6 months ago, said she was looking for freelance design work, said her marriage was falling apart and she needed to establish her own income stream." "And you believed her?" "I wanted to believe her. She was very convincing." "What kind of work did you give her?" "At first, just small projects, consulting on color schemes, helping with client presentations. But then, she started suggesting bigger things." "Such as?" "She said she had connections in the city planning office, people who could steer commercial development contracts our way." "Did she?" "I don't know. She set up a few meetings, introduced me to some people. We got 2 new contracts out of it." "And in return?" Theo's face reddened. "In return, I gave her a job, and a salary, and what? And I fell in love with her." I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. "She told you her marriage was over?" "She said you were emotionally abusive, that you controlled all the money, monitored her activities, made her feel like a prisoner in her own home." "And you believed that?" "She had bruises." I stared at him. "What kind of bruises?" "On her arms, her wrists. She said you grabbed her during arguments." "I never laid a hand on my wife." "That's what she said you'd say." "Theo, those bruises weren't from me." "Then where did they come from?" "Probably from Jet Forrester. He's the type who likes rough play." Theo looked confused. "Who's Jet Forrester?" "One of the other men she's been seeing." "Other men?" I showed him the screenshots from Lyra's phone, not the explicit ones, just enough to demonstrate that he wasn't her only extramarital relationship. "She's been seeing 3 different men," I said. "You, Jet, and Travis Kern from First National Bank." Theo stared at the images like they were written in a foreign language. "That's impossible." "Is it?" "She said she loved me. She probably said the same thing to the other 2. "No, you're lying." "Am I?" "Call her. Ask her about Jet and Travis. See what she says." Theo reached for his phone, then stopped. "She won't answer," he said quietly. "Why not?" "Because she's been avoiding my calls since yesterday, ever since you came here asking about renovation work. Maybe she's avoiding your calls because she knows her plan is falling apart." "What plan?" I spent the next 10 minutes explaining what Lyra had told me about Serene's revenge scheme, about the coordinated effort to destroy my reputation and steal my assets. Theo listened with the expression of someone watching his world collapse in real time. "She used me," he said when I finished. "She used all of us. But I thought she cared about me." "Maybe she did, in her way. But she cared about the plan more." Theo buried his face in his hands. "What am I supposed to do now?" "You're going to help me finish this." "How?" "By telling the truth, all of it. The fake bruises, the business connections, the way she manipulated you into believing her marriage was abusive. Why would I do that? Because if you don't, I'm going to tell everyone that you knowingly participated in a scheme to defraud a married man of his assets. How do you think that's going to affect your business? You can't prove I knew anything. I don't have to prove it. I just have to make people believe it. And people love a good scandal, especially one involving affairs and financial manipulation." Theo looked around his office at the portfolio books and fabric samples and business cards that represented years of work building his reputation. "What do you want me to do? I want you to write it all down. Everything she told you about me. Everything she asked you to do. Everything you believed about our marriage. And then what? Then we're going to have a little party." Phase 3 complete. By 5 o'clock, I had written confessions from all 3 of Lyra's lovers, detailed documentation of their roles in Seren's revenge scheme, and a plan for the final act of this drama. I called Lyra. "Mason? Thank God. I've been trying to reach you all day. I've been busy." "Doing what?" "Cleaning up your mess." "What does that mean?" "It means Jet, Travis, and Theo have all been very helpful in explaining their roles in your little conspiracy." Silence on the other end of the line. "Lyra? What do you want?" "I want you to call Seren. Tell her to meet us tonight." "Where?" "The old amusement park by the lake. You know the one." "Mason, that place has been closed for years." "Perfect. Nice and private." "Why there?" "Because it's time to end this. All of it. Tonight." "I'm not going to—" "Yes, you are. Because if you don't, I'm going to release everything I've learned today to the police, the media, and anyone else who's interested in hearing about how my wife and her best friend tried to destroy my life." Another long silence. "What time?" 8 o'clock. "And Lyra?" "Yeah?" "Bring Seren. This concerns her too." I hung up and spent the next 2 hours making final preparations. By the time I drove out to the lake, everything was ready for the confrontation that would end this nightmare once and for all. The abandoned amusement park sat on 50 acres of lakefront property, a monument to failed dreams and bad business decisions. It had been closed for 3 years, ever since the owner went bankrupt trying to compete with the big theme parks down south. Now it was just rusted rides and empty concession stands, slowly being reclaimed by the Maine wilderness. I parked near the entrance and walked through the broken gate, carrying a duffel bag full of documents and recording equipment. The tunnel of love ride sat in the center of the park, its heart-shaped entrance faded and peeling, like a Valentine's Day card left out in the rain too long. Perfect. Lyra's BMW pulled into the parking lot at exactly 8 o'clock. She got out alone, looked around nervously, then walked toward the entrance. "Where's Seren?" I called out. "She's coming. She wanted to talk to her lawyer first." Smart woman. Lyra picked her way carefully across the cracked asphalt, avoiding the weeds and broken glass that littered the abandoned midway. "This is insane, Mason. We're adults. We should be handling this through lawyers and mediators, not playing games in an abandoned theme park. We should be handling this a lot of ways. But here we are." A second car pulled into the parking lot, a red convertible that belonged to Seren Faye. She got out slowly, scanning the area like she expected an ambush. "Mason," she called out. "This is ridiculous." "Is it? I thought it was poetic." The 3 of us stood in the middle of the abandoned amusement park, surrounded by the ghosts of other people's fun, preparing for a conversation that would determine how the rest of our lives played out. "So," I said, pulling out my phone and activating the recording app. Let's talk about revenge. Seren approached slowly, her designer heels clicking against the cracked asphalt like a countdown timer. Even in an abandoned amusement park, she looked like she was posing for a photo shoot. Blonde hair, perfectly styled, makeup flawless, clothes that probably cost more than most people's mortgage payments. "This is dramatic, even for you," she said when she reached us. "I'm just getting started." "Mason, please," Lyra said. "Let's just talk about this rationally." "Rationally? You want to talk rationally about how you and your best friend spent months planning to destroy my life? That's not what happened, isn't it?" I pulled out my phone and played the recording I'd made at Jet's garage that morning. His voice came through clearly, describing in detail how Seren had approached him 6 months ago with a proposition: help seduce a married woman, and she'd steer business his way through her social media connections. Seren's face went pale. "That's illegal. You can't record people without their consent." "Actually, Maine is a one-party consent state. As long as one person in the conversation knows it's being recorded, it's perfectly legal." "You weren't part of that conversation." "No, but the device I planted in Jet's car was. Turns out he's been recording his own conversations for months, probably for insurance purposes. Very thorough guy." I played another recording, this one of Travis explaining to a colleague how a social media consultant had promised him new clients in exchange for helping her friend navigate a difficult divorce. "That's taken out of context," Seren said. "Is it? Because I have 6 hours of recordings from various sources, all describing the same basic scheme. You orchestrated a conspiracy to destroy my marriage and steal my assets, using my wife and 3 different men as your pawns." "You can't prove that." "I don't have to prove it. I just have to demonstrate it." I opened the duffel bag and pulled out 3 thick folders, the written confessions I'd obtained from Jet, Travis, and Theo, along with copies of all the relevant text messages, emails, and financial documents. "Jet Forrester has admitted to accepting money from you in exchange for seducing my wife and gathering information about my work schedule and business connections." "That's not..." "Travis Kern has admitted to providing confidential financial information about my accounts in exchange for promises of new business referrals. He can't..." "And Theo Marquez has admitted to creating fake evidence of domestic abuse, including staged photographs of bruises that he believed came from me, but actually came from your other co-conspirators." Seren stared at the folders like they contained nuclear waste. "None of that proves I orchestrated anything. Doesn't it?" I pulled out my phone again and played a recording of Seren's own voice, captured during one of her phone calls with Lyra. "That's you explaining how to make the bruises look more realistic and how to time the police report for maximum impact. How did you..." "Your best friend has been recording your conversations for weeks, Seren. She's been documenting everything, probably as insurance in case your plan went wrong." I looked at Lyra, who was staring at the ground like she wished it would swallow her. "Isn't that right, honey?" "Mason, You've been recording Seren because you knew this whole thing was going to explode eventually, and you wanted to make sure you had evidence that it was her idea, not yours." Lyra looked up with tears in her eyes. I was scared. Of what? Of her. Of what she might do if the plan failed. Seren spun around to face Lyra. "You recorded me?" "I recorded everyone. It was the only way to protect myself." "Protect yourself from what?" "From you." Lyra's voice cracked. "You've been obsessed with me for years, Seren. This whole thing wasn't about revenge against Mason. It was about getting me away from him so you could have me for yourself." "That's not true. Isn't it? The late-night phone calls, the constant text messages, the way you touch me when we're together. You've been in love with me since college, and you finally saw a chance to break up my marriage and make me dependent on you." Seren's carefully composed facade finally cracked. "You have no idea what you're talking about." "Don't I? Because I have recordings of you admitting it." Hours of conversations where you talk about how much you hate Mason, how you've been waiting for years to destroy him, how you fantasize about us being together. You manipulative. I'm manipulative. You orchestrated an elaborate conspiracy involving 4 different people, all so you could steal another woman's wife. The 2 women faced each other in the middle of the abandoned amusement park, years of hidden resentment and twisted affection finally boiling over into open conflict. I almost felt sorry for them. Almost. "This is all very touching," I said, "but we're not here to discuss your relationship issues." "Then why are we here?" Serene asked. "We're here because you destroyed my life, and now I'm going to return the favor." I pulled out a tablet and opened a video file. This is a compilation of everything I've gathered over the past week. Recordings, documents, photographs, witness statements. It tells the complete story of your conspiracy, from the initial planning stages to the final execution. What are you going to do with it? I'm going to upload it to every social media platform I can find. YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. I'm going to make sure everyone in this city knows exactly what kind of person you are. Serene's face went white. "You can't do that." "Why not? You made your living on social media. Seems appropriate that social media should be your downfall." "It'll destroy my career." "That's the point." "Mason, please," Lyra said. "Don't do this." "Why not?" "Because it'll destroy me too." "You should have thought of that before you decided to cheat on me with 3 different men." "I made mistakes. We all made mistakes. But this is just revenge." "Yes, it is." I looked around the abandoned amusement park, at the rusted rides and broken dreams, at the 2 women who had tried to destroy my life and were now begging me not to destroy theirs. "You know what the difference is between you and me?" I said finally. "What?" Serene asked. "When you decided to destroy my life, you made it personal. You made it about revenge and jealousy and obsession. You turned it into something ugly and pathetic." "And you're not?" "When I decided to destroy your life, I made it professional. I treated it like a project. I identified the objectives, analyzed the risks, developed a strategy, and executed it systematically." I held up the tablet, my finger hovering over the upload button. "The difference is that I'm better at this than you are." "Wait," Serene said. "What do you want?" "What do I want?" "To make this go away. What do you want?" I pretended to consider the question. "I want a public apology, from both of you, posted on all your social media accounts explaining exactly what you did and why it was wrong." "That's it?" "I want you to disappear. Leave town, start over somewhere else, and never contact me or anyone I know ever again." "And if we do that, you'll delete the video?" "I'll consider it." Serene and Lyra exchanged glances, probably trying to figure out if they could trust me. "How do we know you won't release it anyway?" Lyra asked. "You don't. But you know what happens if you don't cooperate." I tapped the upload button, and the video began processing. "You have 30 seconds to decide." "Okay," Serene said quickly. "Okay, we'll do it." "Both of you?" "Yes," Lyra said. "Both of us." I canceled the upload and put the tablet away. "Smart choice. When do you want the apologies posted?" "Tonight, before you leave town." "And the divorce?" "Will be handled through lawyers, like civilized adults." I picked up my duffel bag and started walking toward the parking lot. "Mason," Lyra called after me. I stopped and turned around. "I really am sorry." "I know." Do you think we could have worked things out? If none of this had happened?" I looked at her standing there in the ruins of the amusement park, next to the woman who had manipulated her into destroying our marriage, and I felt something that might have been pity. "No," I said. "I don't think we could have." I left them there among the broken rides and faded dreams. 2 women who had tried to play chess with a man who understood that the only way to win some games was not to play by the rules. By the time I got back to my hotel room, both apologies were live on social media. Seren's was brief and professional, admitting to errors in judgment and inappropriate behavior. Lyra's was longer and more emotional, acknowledging her affairs and apologizing to me specifically for the pain she had caused. The comment sections were already filling up with shocked responses from friends and followers. By morning, both women would be social pariahs, their reputations destroyed, their credibility shattered. I poured myself a drink and sat by the hotel room window, looking out at the city lights and thinking about justice and revenge and the difference between the two. My phone buzzed with a text from Jenny Morrison. "Saw the posts. You okay?" I typed back, "Better than okay." What happens now? Now I start over. Any regrets? I thought about that for a long time before answering. "No," I typed finally. "No regrets." I turned off my phone and finished my drink, watching the city sleep below me. Tomorrow, I would start the process of rebuilding my life. New house, new routines, new possibilities. Tonight, I was content to sit in the quiet satisfaction of a job well done. They had wanted to teach me a lesson about appreciation. Instead, I had taught them never to underestimate a quiet man with a methodical mind and nothing left to lose. The hammer had fallen, and the game was over. I had won.